go, I release, and I know I forgive, I receive, I can feel, I believe, I am healed, I am whole, I release, I know.
Is one of the purest, most sublime spirits I've encountered. Gentle voice, gentle sound, but booming spirit. She makes life more graspable. I listen to her, I see and sense and say to her and about her, she's a woman of good, a woman of God, a woman of elevated consciousness. I'm so glad to be a part of your life and that you are a part of mine and that we are all together a part of each other's. Peace and blessing.
Hello everyone, I'm Sister Jenna. A few years ago I had a vision. The vision was comprised of witnessing members of Congress really going through a very tumultuous time. I had envisioned that within the walls of Congress there were questions about trust between themselves, but there was also the question of trust with Americans and the leadership of the country. So I went about to search for members of Congress who would be open to share with me the depths of their heart, what was at the base of their conscience. And I came across some of the most beautiful people that I walked away with this experience that our country is in good hands. Here we are many years later, maybe about 4 or 5 years later, after I had actually initially recorded Soul Talk on the Hill. And we're witnessing stuff that we have never seen in the United States of America. Trust within the walls of the United States Congress is at the all-time lowest it has ever been. As you know, just a few weeks ago, there were riots on the Capitol Hill. It was an insurrection. There were a lot of people hurt emotionally, mentally, physically. Soul Talk on the Hill invites me into the walls of the halls of Capitol Hill to sit and have a heart-to-heart conversation with members of Congress about what matters to them the most. What's at the base of their heart, their character, the content of the hill. It makes us see them for who they really are. Put aside all the political jargon that goes on. We get to see really who are the people that are creating our policies, voting for our rights. These are good people. And given the opportunity to really speak from the depths of their heart, the country, our cities, our districts will continue to keep thriving. As See Good TV re-releases this season of Soul Talk on the Hill, it is my pure wish that you sit back and relax and enjoy each of the episodes. Just go into the content, the questions, their expressions. You learn a lot about these people. They're good people. For anyone right now, it's a hard time. Globally, in the United States, it might be even more so, one of the hardest times it has ever endured. But I know that we will prevail, and I know that we will succeed. Soul Talk on the Hill is to invite you to give our congressional members a second chance, to begin to find ways to communicate with them from matters of heart and not matters of the political spectrum. What's more important than anything is what is the need of the time internally, and how does my conscience and my heart find peace in my choices. Soul Talk on the Hill asks important questions, and the congressional leaders gave very profound answers. If you've got any comments or anything you'd like to share, please feel free to let us know. We would love to hear your feedback. Soul Talk on the Hill is not endorsing any political parties or any candidate. It is simply having a heart-to-heart conversation with those who gave me the permission to come into the sacredness of their office and delve into their hearts. Enjoy Soul Talk on the Hill. Be well. Be safe. God bless you. Please, take care of yourselves. Hi everyone, Om Shanti. Welcome to your next normal. I am so excited. Yep, yogis also get excited, even though whatever they're going through is nothing new. Today we have back a returning guest, Ainslie MacLeod, who is an internationally acclaimed past life psychic spiritual teacher and award-winning author of The Instruction, The Transformation, and most recently, The Old Soul's Guidebook. Who you are and why you're here and how to navigate life on Earth. Ainslie specializes in exploring past lives to reveal your life purpose and has been a featured guest on the Oprah's Super Soul series and Super Soul Conversations. If you remember the last time we had Ainslie on, it was a really, really popular show and everybody wanted to hear more and more and more. And today my conversation with him will be just that, to dive into the more, but also the soul search to unify ourselves and to unify the United States of America. So please call your friends, text them, email them, let them know that this is going to be one of those rocking next normal shows that you're just going to walk away with and love. Of course, I'm predicting that because, I'm going to have a psychic on air. So I'm just saying that we're going to do this. And we're really looking to see what tools can we get from Ainslie to be able to understand our lives more and understand each other and assist in the unity of the United States and the unity of ourselves. So without any further ado, I am privileged and pleased to welcome my wonderful, beautiful brother, Ainslie MacLeod, back onto the next normal in collaboration with America Meditating Radio. Ainslie, welcome. Welcome, Ainslie. I am excited to have you back on the show because the times have changed and we're changing and we need your wisdom. So welcome back and Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you, and thank you so much for having me back on the show. This is an absolute highlight for me. So Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to another lively discussion.
Times are going so fast for us, and the last time that we were together, everybody was so enthralled by the wisdom that you brought into the space, and with the new administration. And I remembered how very clear you were as to what were the past lives karmas of the previous administrational leadership in the country, that I think everyone's kind of sitting on the edge of their chairs to hear what are some of the things that you're seeing for this current leadership, but also for our own lives. And so before we get right into that, I just really wanted to acclimate everybody with a little bit about you and your journey. Sure. You've had a very fascinating story, and it continues to unfold, I'm sure, with every step of the way. But you've walked into this genre of really being able to investigate the power of our past lives and how they impact the people that we are today. And I'll give you an example. Today I was just doing a little recording with one of our wonderful youth leaders, Aditi. And while I was doing a recording about sharing a part of my life, I started to feel a little emotions from something that I went through many, many years ago. And I said to myself, as I'm going through the emotional feeling, at the same token, Ainslie, I'm going, why is that still there in me?
Yeah.
Where does that go? What is it connected to? Even though I have all the intelligence that this has nothing to do with me anymore. It's Om Shanti. It's gone.
Right.
But yet the feeling doesn't leave me. Now, I've been through challenging situations. I've had losses. I've had betrayal. And even if I think of those people, it's Om Shanti. It has no effect on me whatsoever. But in this particular area, I still get a little tenderness. I mean, it's so deep. So when we look at our past lives and we try to understand what these emotions mean to us now, can you help us to kind of understand, where do we start? Where do we start the healing process?
Well, absolutely. Well, what you get in this life when you encounter a trigger or some kind of reminder of the past life trauma is you get sort of hooked back into whatever happened, sometimes hundreds, even sometimes thousands of years ago. What I always say, I'm very fond of saying that past lives explain absolutely everything, because everything about us really as humans is past life related in some way. And I can talk more about that later. But what happens when you have a trauma in a past life is that the memory gets carried with the soul. I picture it almost like the soul having, some suitcases it carries with it, and inside are the fears. And when you hit a trigger or a memory, something that reminds the soul of the past, it often overreacts. And so you think you've done the work, you think that's all in the past, it's all done. But sometimes fresh triggers appear. In fact, even past lives that weren't up before can be. You can, like new memories can trigger, or new experiences can trigger memories of past lives that you weren't even aware of before. I always feel like the key to really the deepest healing is to go back and find out what happened in the past life, to really take the heat out of whatever reaction you have in the present. And especially if you have something where it seems like you overreact. Where does that really strong feeling come from? A typical example would be that if you've had a past life of imprisonment or enslavement, that leaves a memory of powerlessness, having no say over your destiny. And in this life, you might not even be aware of it until somebody tells you what to do. If they order you to do something, and then the soul goes, oh, wait a minute, don't tell me what to do. Because that reminds me of the disempowerment that I had in the past life. So you often get that extreme overreaction This is where, with some kids, for example, you tell them not to play in the traffic, and they go, well, damn well go and play in the traffic. Don't tell me what to do.
Not even just kids, mothers too, because
Well,
my
that's
mother's
actually-
like that. When I tell her, she's like, no, don't tell me what to
too.
do.
Right. But that's where it comes from. Whenever you get a really strong reaction, one typical thing that I found a lot over the years is when I'll tell somebody about a past life experience, and they'll relate it to a movie. I might tell somebody they went down with a ship, and this is where people would say, oh my God, when I saw Titanic, I sobbed all the way through. It was the most awful experience, couldn't sleep for a week. It's like, Schindler's List reminds them of the concentration camp or prisoner war camp that they're in, or she once told me that a client told me that she had, I'm trying to think what movie it was, but she had no idea that she had this past life issue. I'm telling her about past life, and I said, does it resonate? And she said she reacted so strongly to seeing something in a movie. It's a Charles Bronson movie, I can't remember the details, but everyone in the movie theater staring at this person who's completely freaking out. The person she's with is going, oh my God, what the hell's wrong with you? Sometimes we don't even know we have an issue until we encounter some kind of trigger, and then it's a real surprise. I think of like, oh my God, why did I go off the top like that? Why was I so deeply emotionally affected by something? You can have a fear of loss, for example, where a lot of people don't know they have that. Let's say you lost everything in a past life. You don't know you have it until you have something that you could lose. That's why a lot of people don't know they have it until they have children. And then suddenly they have something they really love and would die if they lost. And that brings the fear up to the surface. Like the parents who check the baby's breathing all the time or whatever have lost children in a previous lifetime. They're hyper vigilant.
I want us to be able to go into the current state of the United States.
Yeah.
But before I do that, I also want to take advantage of having you with me to answer some of my own personal queries. And there are a few things that you've raised. And last time when we were together, you raised them too, and I hadn't had a chance to ask you the question. But there are two things. The whole notion of powerlessness, as you mention it, it keeps coming back again. And I'll tell my friends and my family that, gosh, I can't tell you how I feel. Like, I feel like I should just pick up a phone and tell people, just stop doing that. Like, I used to have that much power, and I just hate feeling that I don't anymore. Where would you say that past life is? What's going on with me? I mean, this happens a lot, and especially in Washington, D.C., when I see the games and the theatrics that's going on in government right now, I would go, look, I just want to call them and say, stop it, that's enough, or else.
Right.
And I don't have that power, and I just feel something in me. It's like, what did you do with your power? Could you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. Well, this actually goes to your soul types, the personality that you brought into this life. And every element of your personality is something you've developed in other lifetimes. That's why I always say that people who think that babies are born as blank slates have obviously never met one. We come in, or babies come in, we all come in with a personality. I mean, we get taken off the track and so on, but that's one of the major things that I do. It's the first thing I do in a session with a client is find out who they are, because who you are is why you're here. So you have the leader in your personality, in your soul types, and you've learned that through many, many lifetimes. Maybe you've led an army, you've led a corporation, you've led a band, because all sorts of ways that you can learn to be a leader. The problem with being a leader is that you want to get things done. It's a lot. There's a lot there about making sure you achieve things in this life. You want to make a difference. It's an old soul, of course. You're wanting to really change the world, if you like. So, as a leader, it's partly why you are drawing people to you like this. You're so like a magnet. People will come to you. But every leader has to deal with two things. They have to deal with impatience, because you've had all these lives where you just said to somebody, do this, and they, assuming they didn't have that past life fear of powerlessness, they went, right, absolutely, yes ma'am, yes
and
sir.
You're born in an Indian family. It's just worse.
Well, huge lessons though, right? I mean, So there's the impatience, because you've had all these lives. It was just like that was how you were. You just issued an order, people jumped to it, and you got things done. It's like really quick. The other thing is diplomacy. Because you want things done quickly, the leaders tends to be fairly economical with words. If you look back at the past lives, if you're out on a hunt, or like I said, leading an army or something, you don't want to have to stop and discuss the philosophical implications of war with those people who are following you. You just simply want them to go, you go there, you do this, that, and that's done. So that diplomacy means that in this life, sometimes leaders can be a little economical with their words, and it can leave people feeling like sometimes that it felt a little abrupt, or they don't see the thinking process, because you've arrived at that, and it's then just get it done. Sometimes the leader doesn't feel the need to process lengthily with people. It's just you've done the internal thing, and then it's just like, okay, here it is. And people who don't operate that way go, oh, did you just sort of make that up on the spot or something? So sometimes they don't feel even like an ownership. There's sometimes the need to bring people on board. Every leader has to learn diplomacy. Even if this is your last life, you still have to work on that a little anyway. And the impatience. The impatience also comes from a place of restlessness, and that's actually a present life soul issue that comes from actually being bored as a child. Typically, it's sitting in class and you've got it, and the teacher's droning on at the speed of the slower kids, and you're kind of like the old soul going, God, when can I get out of here? I've got a life to lead. I got things to do. I got to go out and lead people and stuff. And so the boredom, what the soul's doing is like, oh gosh, we're really bored here, and that actually creates some impatience in adults.
Ainsley, I was remembering in college, I used to have my friends that, look, just record the class, and when you're done, just give it to me, okay? And then yes. I would just listen to it while I'm at the beach or playing billiards with my friends, and I'm listening to the class, and I end up Phi Beta. It was like, right. How do you do that? They would tell me, like, nobody does that. I've got another one to ask you, and then we're going to go into how we think we can help to unite the country by understanding our past lives.
Right.
Throughout this incarnation, I've had this uncanny discomfort. Now it's much less than it was before. But I remembered I was always uncomfortable or afraid of priests, gurus, churches, temples, anything to do with anything religious, except for nuns. I love the nuns, right? But I would literally go into a church and my heart would go like, like I can't stay here. And the only church that I had found comfort in is the Washington National Cathedral up here, because I was very close to the former dean, Sanford Garner, and I used to be very close. He was the only priest that I actually felt safe with. Mm-hmm. Now, everywhere else I went and everyone else I met, it was like, I just can't. And when I would see a guru, I would cross the street. If I would be walking on the street and I'm going by a church, I would cross the street. I can't handle it. Mm-hmm. Where does that come from?
It comes from, so many of us have been abused by people in positions of power in previous lifetimes. And a lot of the power traditionally has been with churches. And so there's an association that a lot of old souls have. One of the big differences between being a very old soul and being a very young soul is that older souls tend to they consider themselves usually to be more spiritual rather than simply religious. And it doesn't for one second mean you can't have the two, but there is a distinction there. And the older soul tends to come down much more firmly on the spiritual side. I mean, they may experience that through being in a church, and certainly, belonging and so on can be a real advantage to being part of something. But you can have, if you've got the abuse by priests, or you were in the Spanish Inquisition hundreds of years ago or something like that.
Said that, but could I have been the abuser?
Yeah. And that obviously we could work together and I could find out if you were. It's often very, very hard to tell whether you were the victim or the abuser. Now, generally, as an older soul, it's more likely you were the victim of something because you've learned to, over this part of what your soul's journey is about, to learn to treat people kindly and not torture them because they believe in something different. But we've all done terrible things in past lives. We've all done that, but we learn from it, and that's hopefully as old souls we have learned that that's not a way to behave. So, but you can't. The interesting thing is you can't tell who's the perpetrator and who's the victim in what they're doing in this life, because it can look exactly the same. And an example I often give is if you've been tortured in a past life, or you've been a torturer, you might, both the perpetrator and the victim might end up working for Amnesty International, trying to end torture, and you can't look at somebody and say, oh, he's doing that because he was a perpetrator, or she's doing that because she's a victim. You're not supposed to know. We're not supposed to judge people that way. But karmically, how you can balance is whether you're being a victim or perpetrator, but by trying to help those who are, victims of whatever was perpetrated, whether you were the recipient or not. So all the time, we're working through karmic experiences, like that from the past.
Last time we were together, and you had shared that a lot of people in the healthcare industry were individuals who had experienced a lot of suffering and a lot of pain. So it's easy for them to welcome 100 patients in a day who are looking like they're dying, and they're like, it's okay, you'll be fine. It's like they're so immune to it. Because I used to wonder what makes a physician so detached from seeing such suffering and can still do their work. One last one before we go into the collective consciousness of the country. So I'm half Indian and half Jamaican African, and I was raised in the USA. And I was raised with my grandmother when I was younger, who's on the Indian side of my father, and I loved her and I loved my family. However, I was not ever very I was really going to embrace my Indian side a lot. It's just like, no, when my father wanted me to get married to somebody who was Indian, I was like, no way am I going to do that, right? So I remembered when even I used to travel to India, I only come to India because of my love for God. I don't want to stay here long. I have to leave. It's not for me, right? Now keep in mind, I've traveled to over 95 countries in my life, okay? And India is the last on my list
right.
to want to keep going back to. But you want to hear this? And I don't know if it's the pandemic that's doing it, but as the family, for the last few months, I need to be in India. And I'm actually getting emotional when I think about India, and I keep feeling like I've left something behind. I've lost something there. Something is missing. I'm supposed to be back there. Now I know we go through various phases as we go through soul cleansing, right? So we pass through a lot of different portals of our consciousness. But for the life of me, Ainslie, I sit there and I'm going, what is wrong with me? Why is it I just need to be in Mother Bharat? And I'm like, why would I even want that?
Okay, well, I'd love to answer that. I can relate to that. I'm from Scotland, and from the time I was little, I never really saw myself. I never felt these are my people. I felt completely out of place, and I left Scotland when I left college. I started moving around the globe. I spent years in London, New York, and West Coast to the States, and moving around, really trying to, as all those souls are doing, trying to find a family, trying to find members of the soul family. And it propels a lot of old souls around the place. We often have very strong feelings about certain places because of what's happened in past lives. I talk about a client of mine who had a terrible experience in France in a past life, and I asked her if she'd ever been there, and she said she'd been to every Western European country. When she was a teenager, she got a rail pass to go everywhere, but she only lasted an hour in France. Couldn't stand it. It was all the memories flooding back from the past life. The moment, the accents, hearing the voices, the smells, whatever. It was all a trigger. Another client who had a fantastic past life in the Amalfi region of Italy, and had gone back there. Actually, I was telling her about a past life in Amalfi, really great life, and I said, "Have you ever been to Italy?" It was the only place she'd been, but her soul had got her to go back to the very place she'd been to re-experience all the good feelings that you get. So the point is that you don't always have the strongest resonance with the place that you're raised in, and sometimes you can be like me. I mean, in fact, one little parallel there is that, over the years, I mean, family has died off, so I don't have very much reason to go to Scotland anymore. So it's been quite a few years since I've been, but I used to go regularly when my parents were alive, a couple of times a year, and especially when they're getting older. And I'd have that first couple of days where I'm going, oh, this is great. I'd be going out for walks in the morning, jet lag, so I'm up at 5 a.m. so I'm going out for walks and thinking, gosh, this is so beautiful, but within 2 weeks I'm kind of going, oh my God, get me out of here. It's like, what is it with me, or what's this place? And but just recently, and I think it may be this powerlessness thing, don't tell me what to do, that I started finding myself getting nostalgic. And at night I'm kind of going online, I'm looking at old pictures of my hometown, and kind of like feeling, well, the feeling is that if I could just get on a bus and I could be there in an hour, I would go back for a little bit, just to absorb some of those feelings. I mean, the thing is, it's like, the other side of the world, and just have schlepped to get there, and you can't go anywhere with COVID anyway. So I'm just visiting online. And if you don't mind me, I've one more little thing, and I put this in my most recent book, that I was working with a client, and I saw that, and the client's Caucasian from actually the part of the world that I'm in here right now, in the Pacific Northwest. But I saw that her daughter had a lot of Latina lifetimes, a lot of lives as a Hispanic woman, and I asked about the daughter, and it turns out the daughter, since she was age 4, she's dyed her hair black, she's darkened her skin, she does not consider herself to be Caucasian at all, and actually has very strong negative feelings about Caucasians based on what's happened in past lives. She's a little bit older now, and looks like she's committing her life to really helping Hispanic women, which is who she was in the past life. But she's somebody who really there's some wires crossed or something there, because sometimes you really have to remind the soul can't separate one life from the next very easily, so it sometimes gets a little confused there. It's one of the reasons why we have to remind it.
Right, that's what makes it so profound, is that we think we know ourselves, but we don't. I mean, I would have never imagined in my wildest dreams that I'd be doing like what you said, that when I had a moment, I would go online and I would look at pictures of India and Bombay and Vizag and Hyderabad, and I'd be like, what is this? And it's like it just would feed me as if I know. And it was just, anyway, so long story. I know it's all past lives.
Yes, totally.
I think more than anything else, it's more, what is the solution in neutralizing all of those mixed feelings in the soul?
It's actually about, really, the topic we're talking about today. It's about unity and belonging, because what every old soul is searching for is that feeling of belonging to something. And even what I was telling you there about my story, where I was moving around the world, I'm seeking some sense of belonging, never really finding it. I never felt anywhere that I lived was permanent. I felt like a tourist, or felt like it was temporary. That feeling, like a saying of these are not my people, it seemed to be like really the story of my life. And a lot of it's because of, the experiences of past lives that may be more connected to different places than the ones that I've actually been to. We're all looking to belong. And this actually goes back to thousands of years ago, tens of thousands of years ago. And is related to something that's actually happening now. There was a shift in consciousness that really made we humans who we are. It happened about 55,000 years ago, when we got a shift in soul, if you like, and that allowed us to start being more creative, more inventive, a really, much higher level of consciousness. And we're actually going through another shift right now. This is, everyone's aware there's some sort of shift going on, but this is the transformation as we go to, another higher level of consciousness. What we have as we go through this, we're trying to tap into something that we had thousands of years ago when we were living these more tribal sort of communities, different parts of the world. I mean, all over the place. But we didn't have the big cities, so we had these more extended families, and there was a strong sense of belonging, and also a greater awareness of our individuality, that we recognized the traits and behavior that came with particular soul types. Like, we didn't send compassionate caregivers out to fight battles. We sent the hunters to do that. The hunters and leaders, those who are much more, more rugged, outdoorsy, and so on. And so we had much more awareness that certain people had certain traits, and they fit very well into the tribe or the community, because then everybody had a purpose, and that created a sense of unity. The awareness that we were all playing a significant part in making sure that the whole community ran like it should, like it functioned. Now that's been lost. A lot of that is lost through, when we started becoming more urban cities. We even going back to the priesthood, which we were mentioning earlier on, where you would, originally in the tribe, you have spiritualist types who are more connected spiritually, and they're the ones who are more responsible for the spiritual well-being of the community. Once we started getting more industrialized, you'd find other types coming in, people whose motives were not pure, using it for control and so on. So, everything gets corrupted, and even right through to this moment where, I talk a lot about soul types and, figuring out who you are. And it just baffles me that corporations and other institutions and organizations don't do this more. I talk to so many people who are square pegs in round holes because of a system that doesn't really understand the individuality. But I digress. So anyway, we're here to try to get back to some of that experience that we had back in the past, where we felt more like we belonged, that we were one. Unfortunately, we've got a hell of a lot of division right now. And it seems like, we're very polarized right now, especially after all that's been happening politically in the States. It really does kind of look like, well, there's two different kinds of country here. It's why there's such a big gulf. The differences always go back to the age of the soul. It's the major. Sorry.
I want to step in right here because it's really important as to where I think our conversation can go in terms of the unifying of the country.
Yeah.
The last time you were on as well, you gave us a reading of what would be the soul type of the former president of the United States, and maybe even, you didn't talk about the vice president, but I'd be curious to hear again, and just for our listeners who are watching, what, if you can share again, what you thought in essence was the soul type of the former president of the United States and maybe vice president, and share if there are insights into the current president and the current vice president, what you see is their soul type.
Yeah. Well, this is making me wish I'd done my homework, because I haven't actually looked at Kamala Harris. I really need to. Maybe I can. I'll talk to the spirit guides later. I can't do it in the moment. It's just, I can't have the two. Well, as I'm talking to you, I can't also talk to my guides, so it's a little bit sort of weird. But I can do that later. Maybe I have my suspicions and thoughts. But the difference is, broadly speaking, is that you have what we just come out of is a much younger soul consciousness. So The former president is a level 5 soul, and there are 10 levels in all. So the people that I talk to, my clientele, is all in the old soul half of that. They're the from level 6 to 10, older souls with a lot more experience. One of the things, I mean, politically and socially, what happens is the soul ages. You start off at, thousands of years ago, life number 1, you're going to be a little bit more fear driven. It's your soul's just getting used to being here. And really the journey takes you from one of fear to love, or as I put it, from me to we. That as we age, we have that greater awareness of the need for unity and the importance of us all kind of working together. Whereas the younger souls see huge differences. They don't see ways to work together. Politically, in fact, I posted something about this just recently and got some interesting feedback, not all of it positive, but it was about how younger souls, like the administration we just have, are not there to govern. They don't want to govern, they want to rule. And, I said that, historically, the biggest enemy is not some foreign country, it's the opposition political party, if one is allowed to exist. I mean, look at what's happening in Russia right now. It's a younger soul who does not want to have any kind of competition there. Forget democracy. It's like the furthest thing from it. So we had a level 5 soul president, the vice president, level 4, I think, level 4, early 5, inexperienced, basically. And, you can see if you step back, I mean, older souls see it really, really clearly. I mean, look at these grifters and see them just as individuals who are just lining their own pockets, or, have no real interest in other people. The younger souls are more easily hoodwinked by that sort of thing, because as long as the person they're looking up to reflects their values, or sometimes lack thereof, then they admire that person. It's like this, the baffling for old souls when they see the amazing support that the former president has. But it's these younger souls who what's so simple to old souls, seeing through the illusion of separation, is that here's somebody who's totally ill-equipped to, I mean, I won't go into the litany of reasons, but totally ill-equipped for the job, and but younger souls unable to see it, literally unable to, and that's baffling for them as well. So when it comes to uniting, it's quite a struggle. You now have, with the new administration, a much higher level of consciousness, much older soul, and which is what you want. I mean, it doesn't mean that, it's going to be perfect, but it's certainly going to be a hell of a lot better for most people. And part of that difference is about as the soul ages, it wants to do more, not just for itself, but for others. That's all part of that unity.
So when we look at President Biden's soul, what would you say has been like his journey? Have any idea?
Well, I've only had a cursory look, and I should actually write a blog post or something about this. But I thought it's interesting that he has had some, major deep emotional challenges in this life. He's particularly in the area of loss. And there is something about when you work through those, deep heart-related traumas, is that it does add to your compassion. It's one of the ways that we, as human beings, that we develop empathy. And that, in fact, if you go back to the previous administration, one of the major problems with the administration itself and those at the top is a complete absence of empathy, an inability to connect with the suffering or experience of others. And that, so for the older souls, like, Biden and Harris and the people that will be drawn to work with them, I think it bodes better for the country, because I think there's going to be, where the young souls go, well, I don't need Meals on Wheels. I don't need food stamps. So let's just end all that stuff. These are billionaires telling the poorest amongst us what we can and can't have. I think we're, one of the things we'll see with that older soul consciousness that we have now is a lot more fairness when it comes to, those who are less fortunate. In fact, if you look at any country and how they treat their elders and the less fortunate is really a sign of how old the souls are in that country. The older the souls, the older soul countries tend to have a better welfare system, better social safety net, maybe more freedom, more opportunity, things like education for all. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. The suicide rate in the United States is increasing, and just this morning I heard that a lot of children are also, ending their lives because they can't go out and they're still being homeschooled and being educated online, and that's a high order. Suicide is a big conversation right now. It's not always easy to articulate what we're feeling. Our congressman, his son, on December 31st just took his life. Congressman Jamie Raskin, who actually introduced the articles of impeachment just a few days ago. And he's been and he had to also duck down on January 6th when the insurrection was happening. Imagine you lose your son to suicide on the 31st. You're at work, you're ducking down the desk because you're counting the final electoral counts. And then there are people barraging in, and then he does the article of impeachment just another week or so later. His soul has been going through a lot. But when it comes on to suicide, what is happening inside of the soul that initiates that act? And is it something that they've done before, or will this be the first rodeo for them?
Oh my gosh, great questions. So what happens when, so consciously you're contemplating suicide, and where the soul starts to go is, yeah, no, things are hard, but don't do that. We don't. That's game over. Because the soul is vested in keeping the whole mind, body, and spirit bundle alive, and so often when a person is going through extreme stress, there's a disconnect from the soul and the conscious mind, and sometimes you lose that. The voice of the soul. It can really end up feeling. For some people, obviously, they're just so alone. There's no hope. There's no potential for change. And they take their own lives. What I found is that the method, or even the thought of suicide, is related to past lives. Because if you have taken your life in the past, when things get stressful, the soul always looks to the past. Actually, not even when it's stressful. Soul is always looking back for reference, not forward. And so it goes, okay, we're going through this, break up with the girlfriend or something. Looking back, and the guy's soul looks back and says, yeah, 200 years ago, we went through terrible emotional suffering, and we took out a revolver and shot ourselves. So it puts it almost like on the front burner, or like out there as a possibility. Now the soul's going, no, we don't want to repeat that. But the voice of the fear says that, well, at least it's an option. It ended our suffering before, and the soul's going, that's not what should happen. But when that disconnect comes along, and the person is really just detached from that feeling of connection. Again, it goes to that unity thing, feeling alone, disconnected, when the soul is not engaged, and it can go into a terrible place of just powerlessness and feeling there's nothing I can do. Now what I found is, okay, so you let's say you took pills and alcohol in a past life, that was how you ended it. So then the soul says, okay, or the memory says to the conscious mind, and okay, well, this is how we could end it here. I'm thinking of actually somebody that turned up at one of my events, and I told her about a past life. I was doing some regressions, but I just gave some freebies out, just going, okay, this happened to you. And I said to her, you died in a past life, pills and alcohol. All she said to me was, how old was I? And I said, you were 19. And the next morning, we started, and she was freaking out. She had a terrible night, a lot of nightmares and stuff coming up. Turned out that age 19 in this life, she tried to end it things with pills and alcohol. Spent quite a long time in the hospital, survived, thank God. But it's the soul always looking back and going, oh, okay, this is how we deal with it. The other thing that I found working with, talking to those on the other side who've taken their own lives, is that almost like the moment you pull the switch or pull the trigger or take the pills or whatever it is, the soul goes, shoot, that was not the this is a disaster. And as that person passes and then reconnects with the soul, they're getting all that the soul has been trying to say. There's what you get is like an immediate regret, and the regret has in the main been about leaving people behind. It's actually about the emotional hurt that it's caused other people. That's where the soul seems to go to immediately. So
it's interesting because there's some souls that are born and you hear them talking about this thing of I don't want to be here and whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's another aspect where a lot of times they connect the choice to commit suicide to depression or mental illness. Is depression connected to some deep unfulfilled expressions of oneself? And the other question here is, what I feel is, since the soul is energy, the soul never dies, then suicide can never be the solution.
No, it's certainly not the solution. But the one thing that I found is that the spirit world is, as I describe it, endlessly compassionate. And so when a soul ends up in the astral plane, the life has come crashing to an end prematurely. There's no punishment. There's no, higher power going, oh, now you need to go back and you need to suffer exactly the way you did. For some people believe that, that, oh, if you take your own life, you'll just have to come back and go through the same thing. Well, sometimes life is just, it's shitty and it's hard and it's and we have things that we never expected, to encounter. So the spirit world, I found, is very, very compassionate. I mean, there's little karma from taking your own life. The karma can be related to how you've affected other people. For example, I'm thinking of one I was looking at. Somebody had taken their own life, and the mother, I think, had ended up being so depressed and so messed up by a thing that took her radically off her life plan, became addicted to something or other, and so there's karma there that will have to be balanced actually in other lifetimes. But there's no punishment or anything like that. It's just, like I say, the spirit world is just going, yeah, we know. Sometimes, because those in spirit have all been there, our spirit guides and those on the other side. It
feels like the punishment was already happening when the soul was in the body and it just couldn't find its peace.
Right. Sometimes we just can't. Sometimes we just, sometimes we just don't have the coping mechanism or the tools. One of the other things that can sometimes happen, and this goes to past lives as well, if you've had a really, really deep, terrible emotional experience, the soul can feel that when you start to feel similar emotions coming up, that you're going to go to the same place that you went to. And so actually, weirdly enough, it's one of the reasons some people have difficulty meditating or regressing, because the soul is trying to keep them on a superficial level. Let's not go down. But what the spirit guides say is that the what is perceived as maybe being a bottomless pit of emotion, this bottomless well, may only be 3 inches deep. And if you can actually allow yourself to experience these things, you'll realize, I can handle this. Sometimes we just, it's not so much what we're going through in the moment, it's what we anticipate going through if it continues, or it's going to get worse.
It reminds me of this video of this little boy, and he's kicking and screaming as he's in the pool, and he's like thinking he's drowning, And so his mother comes and tells him, just stand up. The pool was like only 2 feet deep. But he thought he was drowning, you know? And
Right,
so again,
yeah.
it's just where we're positioning ourselves emotionally, mentally.
And again, because of past life, because if you
Yes.
drowned in a past life, you expect that to happen again. And this weird thing that I discovered over the years, I've been reading people in the past lives for over 20 years now, and I've come across this a few times over the years, is where I found that they drowned in a recent past life, and then they tell me the story, and it's almost exactly the same each time, is that they were 2 years old or something, and they're in one of these little kiddie pools, little paddling pools, and they slip under, and most kids would, well, you know, try to get back up to the surface or whatever. And what happens to those who have drowned before is they go under and they go, well, here we go again. And they don't try to protect themselves. They don't try to get out of it. And always the same thing is, somebody saw that I was, you know, at the bottom of the pool and came and fished me out. But they just, there's just that assumption like, oh yeah, here we go again. So don't even try to prevent it happening.
Fascinating, Ainslie. I mean, who doesn't want to explore the universe behind our eyes? I mean, you could live there forever. And
Oh my God,
Oh my God. You know, why would you want to be so external that you miss the
I know.
incredible autobiography that's going on behind your eyes?
Truly.
I want to kind of go back a little bit to our conversation about America and,
Yeah.
you know, looking at President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, and his entire administration has come out with such a beautiful energy to the country. And they really do want to unify. Unify the country doesn't mean think my way, but find a way to respect one another and to somehow be able to cooperate even if there are differences. The fact that you've said that almost like half of the country is new souls, like there are new souls to some extent because they were following a newer leadership. And then there's another big chunk of the United States that seems as if they're not that new of souls, and they're into the we and not the I. They're into the sharing and not just the taking. What would you say Americans really need to do now to understand their soul story to really help in this coming together?
Boy, well, I think the ideal would be, well, I think it's going to start happening because the ideal situation is where you have really old souls at the highest levels. You know, the old phrase, as above, so below. You know, what we've had going on in the last many years is we've had a lot of narcissism at the top, and it's really created a very narcissistic nation. I'm actually writing about that right now. So I think if you get more old souls coming in with the greater altruism, that will filter down. One of the things that I find extraordinary is how little shame there is amongst politicians. I mean, you know, I grew up, you know, in Britain. I just remember, you know, growing up, and these politicians, they get caught with their pants down or whatever, and they resign. You know, there's some shame, and we've got this. You know, it's like, does nobody have enough shame to resign? Because there's a whole bunch of you should be gone, you know, if you had any decency, you know. So that, but you know, again, as above, so below. So if we have more older souls in position of power, I think that's going to, you know, really that will make the huge difference, because we shift. Part of the shift in consciousness that we're undergoing all the time, and it's speeding up because of this transformation that we're going through. But if you look at 500 years ago, any major city in the world, practically, you would see things that would horrify you now, like, you know, public executions, you know, the people being hanged, drawn, and quartered, child prostitutes on the street. Just stuff that we would be horrified by now. And actually, the good thing is that it's a sign of an increased consciousness that we find these things. I mean, you know, now if you walk down a street in New York and found a person hanging in the corner, you'd think that something is very, very wrong here. But a few hundred years ago, that was the norm.
Because on one level, yes, when we go back to those times, it seemed medieval.
Yeah.
I mean, it was cruel, and yet, at a conscious level, some people I've heard Some people are saying consciously the vibrations is the lowest it's been. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm. I think it's very low, low right now. Yeah, and but no, what I get from the spirit world is that we are progressing all the time, even if we have, little setbacks. And what we've been having a lot of, again, it's related to this shift in consciousness, so there's, older souls coming forth. There's more sense of, the importance of unity and belonging and fairness and, sharing the wealth and so on. And actually that is, sorry if to go off at a slight tangent, but the inequality is a major problem, that we are all, deep down, we're all equal. All souls are equal, and we have such inequality, and of course that's part of what keeps us at that lower level of consciousness as well. We've been seeing just in recent years what I feel is like we're rising. Our consciousness is rising all the time, but we have the younger souls kind of pushing it back down because they don't understand what's going on. It's a fear response. And the people who are out in the streets, the Proud Boys and whatever, all that aggression is just fear. It's an expression of fear. And a lot of it comes from that they're seeing the world changing, especially, the white supremacists are aware that they're losing their privilege, and they're not very happy about that. So there's a sort of reaction going on right now. Young souls perceiving these changes, they don't like them, and it's coming out in this aggressive way. But it's a fear of stuff that they don't really know, and it won't be like that forever. But we're it's a flare up right now. But overall, we're all going in the right direction. Really, the soul's journey takes it so much, like I say, from fear to love. Part of that is politically, where we go from is conservatism to a more progressive view. The older the soul, generally, the more progressive they are.
Absolutely. As we come to a close of our wonderful time together, you and I could just keep going on and on without even knowing what the time is. So is there a solution? Let's say everyone who's watching tonight, what's the solution to create a golden aged world? And I agree with you. We are all equal when we are soul conscious, but we're not going to be equal in the roles that we are going to play. And we must accept that. You know what I mean? Yep. So that's a given. I think what happens is that people look more at each other's roles, and we don't see each other as souls. So there's just going to create a whole bunch of, what we call in Hindi, jamela, just chaos and craziness that happens. What's the solution, Ainslie? What's the solution for us to move towards a golden aged world where we can see soul to soul and have a deeper sense of acceptance of each other?
Well, I think it is important for us all to do something. Every one of us should be doing something that it's considered to be a spiritual act. And a spiritual act is something that you do where you heal yourself from past life and even present life issues, because they're all connected. And you do it by helping those who suffer as you once did. Now, what that means is that, I'll give you a typical example. I work with a lot of life coaches, and I'll see that disempowerment from enslavement or something in a past life, and how they want to become an empowered person. That's the soul's goal in this life. You've been disempowered, so therefore karmically you want to be empowered, but they want to empower others. It's part of it's a spiritual act associated with whatever you're going through. So, one way to look at it is that we should all be doing something. I get a lot of hate mail from people. I'm constantly being told to stay out of politics. I'm so disappointed in you. You're supposed to be a spiritual teacher. Now you're getting involved in politics. And I go, politics and spirituality are inseparable, totally inseparable. And for everybody who says, I'm spiritual, I don't get involved in politics, there's a kid in a cage at the border. You sticking your head in the sand has an impact on other people. Even somebody said to me the other day, because like I talk about, the older the soul, the more progressive you're going to become. And somebody's, taking me to task about that. But it they don't like to hear that necessarily. But the older the soul, the more progressive, the more caring you are about other people, and you should be doing something to help others. We should all be doing that. I work with a lot of people who feel blocked, and one of the things that often comes up is do something to help somebody else. Let's do something bigger than ourselves. So that's, I think, that's going to be a significant way that if we start to all get more involved in doing stuff that helps other people, particularly the less fortunate amongst us. And that can be things like blogging, even, just making people aware of the plight of others, and maybe getting them involved, or being, you being part of an organization, join some organization that speaks to you. We all have those things that we get more fired up about because of our own personal past life experience. So, if something speaks to you, then find a way to help others. I mean, God knows there's so much need, but the spirit guides talk about practical spirituality, meditation, regression, all yoga, all these things that we do. These are super important. They're taking us to a point. They're to some extent they're a means to an end, because they're not just the end in themselves. So a lot of people think that, well, I do yoga every day, so I'm spiritual. But true spirituality is really measured much more when you go to the other side and process this life. It's about how much you influenced others, or made a difference, or improved the world.
With you, I remembered in my early days, maybe the first 3 years or so, or 2 years of my spiritual awakening. And you know how individuals have a way of recognizing something in you and letting you know that you're something special. And I remembered one day I was sitting in our meditation room in New York, called Baba's room. And I'm sitting and I'm looking at Baba's light, and I was saying, Baba, I'm not what they think. I mean, I'm just Jenny off the block right now, and I don't know what has happened, but I know there are changes going on. And I had the most beautiful whisper from God, and he says, look, I don't really need you to be perfect right now. Just be honest, and your honesty will lead you to your perfection. And that just took the weight of me trying to think that I had to be this spiritually perfect image for the world to use and do whatever it wanted to do with me. And it just released me from the tension of trying to perpetrate a fraud, so to speak,
Yeah. No, I love that, because, perfection, when we look at the soul's journey, one of the things that the spirit guides joke about is they say perfection is not the goal, because if it were, we'd all be here forever. We'd just keep having to come back, because we're never going to fully get perfect. There's a sort of point where good enough is, that is kind of good enough. But what is really important, and you touched on that, is it's about how you express the 10 core values that every soul is seeking to embody. And that includes truth. And that means like really speaking your truth, whatever that, means to you. Peace, truth, love, understanding, and so on. These are the core values. So if you turn up in the world and you speak your truth in an attempt to create a better world, that's great. You don't have to be perfect. None of us are.
I love it. Have you got a copy of your latest book to show us?
I can go grab one.
No, don't worry. We'll put it up on the screen. And
Thank you.
I guess we should just do a part 10 at some point.
Oh, I'll talk anytime. Absolutely. I love our chats.
Yeah, me too.
Always such interesting questions. And I appreciate the opportunity here. So absolutely, anytime you want me here, I will be there. I will come running.
When we share our time together, Ainslie, I feel like we're on a sofa near a fireplace, and we're just mystically so intrigued by the energy of soul and what it actually means. And I think it's both of our wish that the world will awaken to this profound world behind our eyes and be able to somehow create world peace. Anyway, any closing remarks that you would like to share with our incredible listeners and viewers?
Yeah, well, because I did want to say something about unity and how fractured everything has been. You know, I get people writing to me saying I'm dreading Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever because, you know, I have to deal with my, you know, Trump supporting relatives or whatever. And so, you know, we feel like so polarized, and what we are all meant to do our very best to get along. And now, I consider myself, I'm an old soul. I consider myself to be a spiritual person. I still get really pissed off sometimes with, you know, younger soul attitudes and so on. But it is so important to be compassionate to others who don't see the world through the same lens as you. Now, that doesn't mean being soft on, you know, bad behavior. I mean, those people who invaded the Capitol building, in my opinion, should be locked up for a good long time. But understanding where they're coming from, I think, is super important. It's not about condoning the behavior, but it really does help, and it will ultimately help when it comes to making social change, important changes, to understand the frustration that people feel, or to try and see the world from their perspective. And it's a lot easier for you as an old soul to do it for them than it is for them to do it for you, because you have the experience. And it's actually through a past life talent for empathy that we're able to do that. We can put ourselves in other people's shoes. But at the same time, you want to lead by example. Every old soul should be showing through how you conduct yourself in the world. This is what an old soul should be doing. It's like the kindness you show to other people, or the ways that you help people who are less fortunate than yourself. You may feel like you're not making any difference, but you are, even if it's just small and it's incremental. But you living a good life and doing the right thing, it affects others. And whatever you do within is bound to affect other people. So I think that would be my parting thought.
Perfect parting thought. Ainslie MacLeod, thank you so very much for joining us again on air, and I'll definitely be pegging you as we move through this very interesting time in the United States of America and the world at large. I think that what you're offering can help us tremendously to let go of those issues that are still sitting inside of this little tiny point of light behind our eyes that we call the soul. And guys, for all of you who are out there, I know you've got like a million questions to ask Ainslie, and I really wish that we could take them, but we are totally running out of time. But what I want to recommend is that right there in the comments thing and right there on the screen, you have his website address and his information. Just go to him, connect. He has a beautiful soul quiz on his website that you can take. And that will also help you to kind of get you on your way to kind of figure yourself out. You know, one of the reasons why we always loved reading horoscopes, to go to a numerologist or have a tarot card reader, is that we're always intrigued about our own stories and about where our story is going to take us. To actually have the knowledge of what are some of the hindrances that are actually pulling you back from shining and thriving, that could be a really big gift for 2021. So hopefully from our conversation today, you've got some really, really precious jewels of knowledge that's helping to lead you closer to your soul conscious self and closer to your relationship with God. I want to thank you all so much for joining us and taking the time to be with us in this particular space of looking at how can we all collectively create unity in ourselves, but also in the country. And it's worth this time and energy now. I love what Ainslie was saying, that we now have an example. You know, we're seeing in leadership the example of how to be with values and virtues and respect and common goodness. And it is my pure wish, and I know it's going to happen, that the more younger souls see that example, it will start to touch their God-given love and empathy and compassion in their hearts. And maybe that will be one of the changes that we will see occurring. I have to tell you that every time I think of President Biden, Ainslie, I get a little teary-eyed. There's a kind of a compassion that comes through him that isn't learned, and it's not theater. It just is. And it says, if I can feel this, and I'm an old soul, I can only imagine that when a newer soul sees this kind of love and kindness and genuinity, it's going to be great. And I'm going to close off with a cute story, because I was talking to someone the other day, and they listened to a particular news outlet that supported the old administration, and they were kind of telling me, well, Jen, you must be really happy about this new presidency. I go, I'm happy with whatever's going on. Of course I don't want people to be unkind. And then she just said, well, you know, Biden is corrupted anyway. And I was just like, oh my gosh. It's just, no matter what you do, that energy lingers in you. And even everyone, and I want you to know this, that even as she said that, I stayed loving and neutral. I wasn't going to go there with it. And then I just moved on to another conversation, because I knew that the soul was just in a particular paradigm and that it was fine.
Right.
It was fine. And so even when you're with your family members and you're having these conversations with them, really take the high road.
That's
the high road.
Such great advice. I totally agree that if you can step back just a little and go, you know, I don't need to get involved in some kind of argument here. Just take the spiritual high road and move on. You know, it's and recognize that, yeah, people will disagree with you. You know, I get some stinkers of messages, and sometimes, you know, I want to say to somebody, like, oh, you know, write back and just, you know, tell them what I think. But I just step back and go, well, it's not going to solve anything. I'm not going to argue with strangers, you know. So, yeah, spiritual high road.
You know, the soul is so powerful, but sometimes it just cannot control that little 3-inch tongue of yours. It just goes right out of you, you know. You miss it. Anyway, Ainslie MacLeod, thank you so much.
Well, Sister Jenna, thank you so much. It's just a real pleasure always. I'm so looking forward to doing it again.
Same here. My delight. Have a wonderful year, and to be continued, yeah?
Yes, indeed. All right, you too. Take care.
Blessings. Take care.
Hi everyone, it's Sister Jenna from America Meditating Radio. I hope you've been enjoying Wiseish, which you can get live on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube from 8:30 a.m. to 8:45. But you can also get it on demand 24/7. It's going to be your power boost for the morning. It's your daily dose for the soul. It's just going to encourage you to make the day that much more valuable. So join us. Looking forward to seeing you.
My wonderful, my